I wonder if I can say a personal note first. That a lot of years ago, I spent a year working in the Library of Congress as I worked on my research for my PhD on the history of arms control. It was a wonderful experience to be immersed for that amount of time in a truly magnificent institution. I've never before or since had the privilege of working in such a wonderful library. It was a great experience, supported by great people. Last month, I made a brief visit back to the Library of Congress for a talk, or a seminar, I should say, marking the 100th anniversary of the Albanian American organization, VATRA. It was there that I had the pleasure of meeting Grant Harris. It was also where I learned for the first time about the importance of the Library of Congress's holdings of books and newspapers and articles on Albania, or on the Albanian lands. The Library of Congress in Washington has the largest collection outside Tirana, I believe, of materials on Albania. It has 13,500 books and other articles, if I recall the number you told us now correctly, Brian. So it's a real pleasure and a privilege for us to have two visitors today from the Library of Congress. Before I introduce them, I owe a word of thanks to Paul Engelstad, the Public Affairs Officer of the U.S. Embassy, who has sponsored their trip to Kosovo and Macedonia, and of course to Ivana Stevanovic, our librarian, and to the library staff. Thank you, Ivana. We're going to have two speakers. I think you're each going to speak for about 15-20 minutes. I hope we'll have some time for questions. Grant Harris is the head of the European Reading Room in the Library of Congress. Grant also is the curator of the library's collections in the Albanian and Romanian languages. And Jason Jasna is an IT specialist as well as a librarian, and he is in charge of the World Digital Library Project, which is an exciting project to digitize an awful lot. And you'll hear more about that project from Jason. Grant, you're going to start with an overview of the library and current projects there, I believe. Over to you. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Hall, for that introduction. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you all for coming today. And I do want to let you know that the Library of Congress is really, it's a world library. We are the largest library in the world. And it's kind of an accident that we got to be so big. We started off as a parliamentary library. It was really just supposed to be the library for the Congress to use. Well, the British came through. We had already gained our independence from England, and they came back through. We had some other quarrels with the British, and they came through in 1814, and they burned the White House, and they burned the Capitol. And when they burned the Capitol building, it meant that they burned the Library of Congress, because the books were all inside the Capitol. So Thomas Jefferson had been president, and now he was retired, and he was living back in the state of Virginia on his estate called Monticello. And he wrote to the Librarian of Congress and said, "I feel terrible that you've lost the library. I would like you to consider purchasing my own personal collection of books, my entire collection." The Librarian of Congress wrote back and said, we're very interested in that. We would only like a list of your books on politics, law, and government, because that's what a parliamentary library is interested in. Thomas Jefferson sent a list of all of his books. He had probably the largest book collection in America at that time, over 6,000 volumes. Thomas Jefferson's books included books on music. He played violin. Architecture. He had designed all the buildings on his estate. Beekeeping. You know what bees are? He had bees on his estate. and he was making honey, all forms of agriculture, astronomy, history, all kinds of science. The Library of Congress wrote back and said, I believe there's been a misunderstanding here. We were thinking about law, politics, and government. Thomas Jefferson wrote back and said, there is no subject upon which government might not need to consult. You must purchase the entire collection. Now, what he didn't say was that he, Thomas Jefferson, liked to entertain extravagantly, and he was always in need of money. And he was not offering to give these books away, he was offering them for purchase. And at the same time, he truly believed, and rightly so, that we needed all of those books for government. And so the Library of Congress said, I guess he probably sighed and said, okay, all right, we'll buy them all. So that was the first impetus for the Library of Congress to become really a universal collection. It's not like the next day we suddenly became universal, but it was the first impetus. And we have those books out on display, actually, his original collection, and it's really quite fascinating. It's one of our most interesting exhibits there. But we are the largest library, and I like to impress on people how we're large. It's not that we have the largest collection of old books. We're getting each year what we think are the best scholarly works from every country on earth. We're getting a fresh supply of the best scholarly research. And it's not just books, it's some of the newspapers. We would have also the largest map collection in the world. We probably have more maps about Kosovo and Albania than anywhere else on earth outside of Kosovo and Albania. We would have the largest music collection. As we discovered with the National Library of Albania when they asked me, it turns out that the Library of Congress has the only sound recording of Faik Konitsa's voice. And we made digital copies of that to give to the National Library of Albania several years ago. It's just amazing what we've got, whether it's sound recordings of music or prints and photographs, other kinds of materials. And what I have in this handout for you talks about some of those special collections on the first page, the second half of that first page, special collections. And some of the reading rooms, if you're interested in performing arts or recorded sound, some of them have their own special databases to look at. At the very end of that first page, the Prints and Photographs reading room has its own catalog. They have over 14 million photographs and posters, and they've already digitized over 1 million of them. And they're available online for you to see and to download. And so that it's a great resource for you to look at. So be aware of that. I'll start back at the top of this page and just say that under the European Reading Room, if you see that heading, you've got my email address and my phone number, so you know how to reach me, okay? So libraries are a bit more developed in the United States than other places. I always think of Europe as having more culture than the United States. But we are, I can easily say, we are the leaders for libraries in making resources available. And part of that is we are reference librarians as well. And that's my beginnings. I am a reference librarian. That means I'm paid to have people like you come up to me and ask me questions. And we feel bad if you're not asking us questions. You've got to come up with questions to ask us if you've got questions. Now, my area is more in the humanities and social sciences, and I suspect, if I've understood correctly, that a lot of you are studying something in science and technology. How many of you are in humanities and social sciences, history? Are there any of you here, or is it pretty much everybody sciences? Just a few of you in humanities, social sciences, but most of you in science and technology and engineering? No, not that.
Most of them are, it's a liberal arts program. So
It's a liberal arts program, okay. Okay. So it's a mix of things. Okay, well, liberal arts is, that's good, that's good. So you've got my email address and you've got some of my colleagues' email addresses up there at the beginning, and you can see how to search. Also, I've got our online catalog listed there as well. Now, there is no one place to find all the information in the world. And so what we all want is the super database that has everything in it. And I'm here partly to tell you that there is no super database. We're all looking for it. We wish it existed, but it's not there. And so even for the Library of Congress, you've got the website for the Library of Congress online catalog. That's part of the super database. But there are other databases even within the Library of Congress. And one of those would be the World Digital Library that Jason will talk about in a few minutes. But I also mentioned to you the prints and photographs catalog and the recorded sound catalog. So be aware of those as separate from the online catalog. Now, I turn the page to the top of the back side of your handout, the digital collections. And we have a lot of materials we've digitized, often in joint projects with other countries and libraries and archives in other countries. So I give you up there, I do mention World Digital Library, the American Memory website right above that. If you're trying to search for only digital materials that focus on America primarily, that would be a good place to search. Well, some of our buildings make great noises too. I like that noise. That was a good one. Some of our buildings gurgle as well. So we are also doing something. It was pointed out to us about 12 years ago that we're collecting a lot of formats, but somebody said, you know, there's a new format out there. It's not microfilm, it's not photographs, it's not maps, and it's called the Internet. And you, Library of Congress, you're supposed to be collecting all formats, and you don't seem to know that there's an Internet out there. What are you doing? Why aren't you collecting the Internet? Oh my God, how do you collect the Internet? How do you do that? Well, I thought you were going to stop the group. It's okay. So we've actually been trying to pull off of the Internet selected websites. We're not trying to do the entire Internet, but we're looking at initially things about America. And we looked at first at the year 2000 presidential elections, which were quite interesting when you had Al Gore and George W. Bush. You know, such a close election. It was a very close election, very heated. The state of Florida helped decide that election. So we've collected some websites, and I have it under Web Archiving Projects, and you can see what we've collected there. I also mentioned the National Jukebox, and I give you the website for that. We've made an agreement with Sony Music Entertainment, and they've bought up a lot of early music between the years of 1901 and 1925, and they've got over 10,000 recordings from that time period up there and available. The downside, the disadvantage is you can't download it and pull it into your computer and just leave it there. You can listen to it all day long. You can stream it, but you can't download it to your computer. So you can listen to all these old materials, not only music, but recordings of people's voices. And so quite interesting material. The next part I have here are the commercially available electronic resources. And in the middle of that section, there's a website that talks about what we offer to people who come and are physically inside the three buildings of the Library of Congress. And usually people your age, when I talk to people your age from Georgetown University or the other universities nearby, there'd be some guy who will raise his hand and ask 2 questions. And the first question will be, but you showed me the website for the European Reading Room. And I'll say yes. And then they'll say, so I'm just going to get to that page, and from there I'm going to get to all these wonderful electronic resources that you subscribe to. And I say, no, I'm sorry, I'm really telling you the truth. You have to be inside our 3 buildings. Your feet have to be here. There's something called a firewall. Do you know that term, a firewall? So there's the internet from the outside, but we have this intranet inside the building that allows anybody there to look at these resources. We're paying $4 million a year to subscribe to these electronic resources, and for the most part they're focused on newspapers and periodicals. I don't even know how many now. I know about 3 years ago we had about 25,000 online newspapers and periodicals available to us. And so in some cases there are bibliographic databases that will tell you about it. In other cases, they're the full text of those. And I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But we have those resources, and you can always see from that website what we're subscribing to. But certain ones will say on-site access only. When you see that, it means you can try and click on it, but you can't get there because it's one that we're subscribing to. The companies that make these are not going to let the Library of Congress give them to the world for free. You have access to a certain number of electronic resources through your library here, and your students, you as students and the faculty can access them here. And I'll show you those in a few minutes as part of the handout. But just be aware those are available, and you can always see what we've got. And you can see some of the free resources that we list also that are very good. And then I also mentioned Ask a Librarian. So on all of our web pages, now we've got about 20 reading rooms. I'm head of the European reading room. We've got a manuscript reading room, a science reading room. We've got different reading rooms, and on each one there will be this little button that says Ask a Librarian. Well, that's what you've got to push those buttons. You know, you've got to make us active and pose a question. So you're expected to do a bit of research here and see if you can find the answers, and then if you can't, then you ask a librarian in the appropriate reading room and see if they can suggest other materials to you. Do not hesitate to use those buttons. You know, poke us with those buttons. You know, make us give you some answers. Now, we're reference librarians. Okay, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that we do the research for you. When we can, we'll refer you to resources. We'll suggest things for you to use. So you may not get the full answer you want, but try us. Don't hesitate to do that. That's one thing that's much more developed in America than here. And you've got Ivana there who will help you, and she's quite willing to help you with reference. But there's only one Ivana. So Ivana is the head librarian, but then she can only give directions and commands to herself to do things. She needs several more people, but make use of her. At the end, I just plant this little seed in your head. The John Kluge Center, we have some fellowships, and those are really intended more for people who have doctorates or are close to doctorates. But there are opportunities to come use the Library of Congress collection and have your own little office there and computer as well. Anybody's welcome, very welcome, to come use the Library of Congress and use it every day. You just come with your passport, and you can walk in and use it for free. You know, every day, all day long. We're open Monday through Saturday. We're closed on Sundays. And then I'll point out some of the databases that you have. That extra handout, I had asked Yvonne to put together a list of some of the bibliographic databases that you have. Now, the ones listed on here are simply bibliographic, not full text. why would I give this to you? You want the text. You want the full text, right? You don't want to see a bibliographic citation. You want the actual text. The reason you want to see these is because oftentimes these bibliographic databases are much better at finding the best articles or books for you. Then you might want to go over and look at the full text resources you have available to you to see if you've got them there. Or maybe you want to do those back and forth. But sometimes you're going to find some of the best resources in these purely bibliographic databases. So make use of these as much as you can. And then you can go talk to Ivana and say, gosh, I can't find this article. Can you help me get it somehow? Because Ivana does do a little bit of what's called interlibrary loan. It's much more involved in United States libraries. There's always a separate person who's an interlibrary loan specialist who will get things from other libraries that are not available at yours. But ask Ivana. See, I'm burdening her shoulders. I can see, her shoulders are sagging now, all the different things I've told you. But she wants to do this. She told me yesterday, she's trying to do all this and learn these things. And Ivana then can turn to me and say, Grant, now look what you've got me into. 10 of my students that asked me, Grant, you've got to help me. You've got to help me. So I'm there. Ivana. Yeah. And that's basically what I have to say. And I will turn this over to Jason to talk. And then afterwards, I think we would have the questions for both of us. Unless you want questions from me first. We'll do this afterwards.
Yeah.
Mr. Grant, thank you for a wonderful introduction to traditional and digital collections of the Library of Congress. And now we proceed with the second part of the lecture, which will be presented by Mr. Jason Yasner, who is operational manager of World Digital Library within Library of Congress. So please, Jason.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here. It's my first time in Kosovo, first time in Pristina. I was in Albania, in Tirana, last year when the National Library of Albania joined the World Digital Library, so I was very happy to visit. Just to let you know that I've had a personal interest and fascination with Albania and the Albanian language and the Albanian lands since I was a teenager. So it was kind of a dream for me to visit Tirana last year, and I've made this joke several times already. I have an iPhone, and this is my iPhone, and this is the back of my iPhone. So you can see I'm a serious fan. Anyway, I am the operations manager for the World Digital Library, which is a special project that the Library of Congress works on with UNESCO in cooperation. And it kind of expands a lot of what Grant was talking about to a more global level. So what is the World Digital Library? Well, essentially, it's a website. It's a website that provides free access to primary sources that document the histories and cultural achievements of all countries. So I want you to write this down right now. The website is www.wdl.org. www.wdl.org. And I believe it's in Grant's handout as well. So what this website is trying to do is make partnerships with national libraries and museums and archives around the world and have them digitize their cultural treasures and heritage and make them available for free on one resource, one website. So these are the type of items that we have up right now. As you can see, rare books, journals, manuscripts, maps, etc., newspapers, films, trying to go for all types of material that represent the cultural heritage and cultural treasures of a particular country or people. So this is just a brief timeline. In 2005, the United States Librarian of Congress, Dr. James Billington, conceived the idea of the World Digital Library, which, like I said, whereas the Library of Congress is the de facto national library of the United States, he wanted to expand that, and he wanted to make partnerships with other national libraries throughout the world. So he came up with this idea. He went to UNESCO, which is part of the United Nations, formed a partnership, got some initial funding. We came up with a prototype, and then we ended up launching in April 2009. So since April 2009, we have 5,734 items on the World Digital Library right now. We have a very, very long-term goal of 100,000 items. Dr. Billington likes to remind me of that number all the time. I like to remind him that I might not be alive by the time we reach 100,000 items, but I plan on doing my best. So, what else does the World Digital Library do? So it's not just a website for scholarly and educational resources. We are trying to do capacity building and sharing knowledge. We know that, as Grant said, the United States library system is very, very advanced, and we are leaders in this domain in the world. We're trying to share our knowledge with other institutions, other countries, and try to help them, try to build capacity. There are many nations out there that don't have the tools that we do, that don't have scanners, that don't have a digitization program. So part of World Digital Library is to reach out to places that are in need of that capacity building and lend our hand. And so, like I said, we have digital conversion centers, 3 right now in Egypt, Iraq, and Uganda. We do encourage digitization where there is no capacity or very little capacity. And we do facilitate cooperation between the Library of Congress and other institutions, but we want cooperation between our partner institutions with each other. So here's just a quick 3 pictures of 3 of our digitization centers in Iraq, Uganda, and Egypt. We plan on more as resources allow. And partners. So who's a partner? A partner is any country that is a member of UNESCO and the United Nations that has a national library, museum, archives that is willing to join. It's free to join the World Digital Library. We have a charter that a partner will sign, and you will get instructions and guidelines as far as what type of content you should select, what our metadata standards are, what our image standards are, et cetera, et cetera. So, like I said, national libraries, university libraries, public libraries, archives, museums, and those type of institutions. Right now, we have 141 partners from 73 countries around the world, and you can see it's pretty diverse. Our goal is to have at least one partner from every country in the world. So what do the partners do when they sign? Well, they sign the WDL Charter, which officially makes them a partner. They select content, and I'll get more into the content about what we're looking for as far as World Digital Library content. Once the content's selected, we're looking for objects, image, digitized objects, and metadata that's sent to the WDO head office that I manage in Washington, D.C. We like the partners to participate in different committees and working groups. We have different working groups devoted to different subjects, such as content selection, Chinese rare books, Arabic manuscripts on science and mathematics, other types of committees like that. We have an annual partner meeting. We just held our 2011 partner meeting in Munich, Germany. Our 2012 will most likely be in Washington, D.C. in December. We also have other meetings as appropriate, different workshops, training workshops that are held throughout the world as resources allow. The partners also elect an executive council that is essentially an executive board that makes the high-level decisions. We want the partners to promote WDL. We want partners to really get their students and their users and their scholars and their teachers to use WDL as a resource and to promote it to other institutions and to their colleagues. And we do have a project website, which is project.wdl.org, that has a lot of the standards and guidelines and different things that are available to an institution once you become a partner. So I want to concentrate on selecting content. So what kind of content is up on the World Digital Library? Well, we do have some content guidelines that were established by our Content Selection Committee. And what we're generally looking for are greatest treasures from their institutions. So what I like to call it is your greatest hits. You have an institution, a national library, an archive, and obviously you have a top 10, top 25, top 50 items that are absolutely the greatest items in your collection. And they don't necessarily have to be about your country's cultural heritage. A good example is one of our partners is the Bavarian State Library in Munich, Germany. And they have a vast collection of Arabic manuscripts. They have some Chinese rare books. And so they've contributed these items to the World Digital Library. So even though it is a German library, the content that they promoted isn't necessarily about German cultural heritage. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking at your greatest hits. Obviously, we do want cultural heritage, especially if we have one partner in one country. We are very interested in filling those gaps to make sure that content, that all world content and heritage is represented. And I mentioned before that we do have some specific committees that have approved themes and priorities. We're always interested in Memory of the World items and the Memory of the World Register from UNESCO, Chinese rare books, Mesoamerican codices, mainly Latin American codices, early manuscripts, and I mentioned the Arabic manuscripts related to math and science. We have specific committees and specific priorities to get that content on the World Digital Library. So some of the site features. So it is a very advanced website. And like I said, I encourage you all to check it out after our presentation here and see for yourself. I don't have the time to do a demonstration right now, but I think you'll really pick up on it when you see it. So one of the most important things about World Digital Library is multilingual. Dr. Billington decided there's no reason to do a World Digital Library that's only in English. We wanted to really appeal to the multilingual aspect of the world. So currently, we have the World Digital Library in 7 different languages. UNESCO identifies 6 languages. I always forget one when I count this out. There's a slide for it later, but Arabic, Chinese, French, English, Spanish, and Russian. We've added Portuguese as well, because there's a large Portuguese-speaking population in the world, and also the National Library of Brazil was one of our first partners. So the website is available in 7 different languages right now. We also have consistent high-quality metadata. We have very high-quality metadata standards, and that is what makes the site work. If you have consistent metadata from item to item to item, it allows you to link items together, to put together that picture. So you might have Chinese rare books from 6 different institutions around the world, but together with the metadata and the descriptions, you can put together a collection, a digital collection of Chinese rare books, even though they come from different places throughout the world. The metadata is really what makes the site work. We have curatorial and scholarly interpretation. So we've set up the World Digital Library and the item level display for students of all ages, for young students in high school and below, but also for high-level scholars, university scholars and professors. We have, every chance we get, we find scholars and curators that are experts on that particular subject to give their scholarly interpretation of what the item is and why it's important. Those are the 2 main questions that you ask yourself. What is this item and why is it important to the world? And I'll show you that there's an item display that, along with the digital item, also has this metadata and a brief description, a brief paragraph. And sometimes we have curatorial videos, and we plan on working on that and getting more of those up. When we have a curator actually record a video describing what that item is. We, as far as translation goes, we also translate the closed captioning, so that if the person's speaking in English, it should be available in the other 6 languages as well, if you don't understand English. The multiple methods to browse. So not only is there a search box that you find on both websites, there are multiple ways to search by place, by time, by type of item, by time frame throughout the world, and by geographical cluster throughout the world. So it makes it very easy to narrow your results to find exactly what you're looking for. Our enhanced display and zoom features are probably the best in the world right now. We have very, very high resolution scans, and when you click on an item, you can scan into an item so close, it's closer than you would have if you had the item in your hand. You would literally have to have the item up against your face. And 99 times out of 100, if not more, you'll never be able to get that close to a very rare item. So in the World Digital Library, we make this item available where you can really, really dig in and see that item as close up as possible. And exposure to search engines. So we expose all of our metadata and meta tags to Google and other search engines. So you don't necessarily have to start at the World Digital Library homepage. You can start in Google if you're looking for something. Google and other search engines will pull up our metadata, so you'll be able to find World Digital Library items via a search engine. And of course, we have Web 2.0 features such as Facebook and Twitter, where you're able to share content and promote content on the internet. Text-to-speech is one of our last ones. If someone is visually disabled and is not able to see very well, we do have a text-to-speech where you can click on it, and the metadata will be read to you in all 7 languages. Depending on which language you chose. So very, very advanced website features. This is just a quick slide to show you some of our financial supporters. This is not an inexpensive project. We've had at least $10 million put into it so far, and it takes a lot of money to keep going between the staff and the workflow and the process and the translation, which I'll get into more. But you can see that we have gotten money from some of the big time people like Google and Microsoft, Carnegie Corporation, Qatar Foundation, KAUST in Saudi Arabia, and of course we have other private donors. Just to make it very clear, the World Digital Library is not funded by the US government, it's funded by private money. So it's not a US government project, it's a joint project with the Library of Congress, UNESCO, and all the partners. So just some quick statistics. In 2011, we had 420,000 visits per month, which isn't bad. It could be better, and we're hoping as time goes on and as more content gets up there and more promotion is done by me coming over to your country and talking about it, and by you going on the World Digital Library and telling your friends and your colleagues, we'll get more hits as time goes on. So where are these people that are using the World Digital Library? Well, you've probably seen a chart like this where you know that the bigger the word, the larger the amount is represented. Spain seems to be where most of our users are. We don't quite know why. We think that even though there is some great Spanish-related content, we think that the partners in Spain, the National Library of Spain and other libraries in Spain, have done a great job promoting the World Digital Library on television, in newspapers, in universities, and so people are using it a lot more. That's exactly what we'd like to see in every country around the world. So you can see we have not just Spain, but we have a lot of Spanish-speaking high-volume partners, Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, and also I said before, because of the National Library of Brazil, we have a lot of Portuguese-speaking people. We have Brazil and Portugal here, and of course the United States is one of the biggest users. So multilingualism, like I said, one of the most important things. Dr. Billington decided there's no reason to do a World Digital Library if it's only in English. That's too provincial. So, like I mentioned before, I actually remembered all 7 languages. For some reason, I always forget one, and it changes every time. It's never the same one. But we would like to add more languages. I said the translation is very expensive. This is probably the most time-consuming part of the entire workflow. Nothing gets up on the website until it is properly translated into all 7 languages. It has to be complete and it has to be high quality before we allow it to go into production. So this is an interesting chart that I like to show. On the left here you see the top spoken languages in the world. In the middle are the top internet languages that are used. And over here are our 7 WDL languages. So as I click through each one of the WDL languages, you'll see how they correspond to the other languages. So at first, Arabic, you see that it's pretty far up, certainly in the top 10 of both. Chinese is absolutely the top spoken language in the world, and the second top internet language. English, French, Portuguese, Russian, and Spanish. So with these 7 languages, we figured that we're reaching over 60% of the world's population, either in their native language or another language that they understand. Because luckily, here I am in Kosovo, most people understand English here, or French, or something else, and so you're able to use the World Digital Library. It is one of my personal goals to get Albanian up on this language list. And you saw my iPhone, I'm very, very much a fan of the Albanian language. Maybe one day we will get that. But some of the other languages, as you can see, that are on this chart, Hindi, Bengali, Japanese, German, Korean, these are languages that are probably going to be the next languages that we're going to go for. So we can reach higher than 60-something%. So as far as languages on WDL, so those languages that I mentioned, that's the metadata and the navigation, and all those things are translated into 7 languages. Excuse me, we do not translate the content. The content remains in its own language. So if we get content in Polish, we don't translate that content. If there's a book in Polish, the content remains in Polish. But you can see how many languages are represented in content on the World Digital Library. Right now it's 78 languages, and that's constantly adding as we get more content. So a lot of these languages, are very, very rare in the sense of they're endangered. Some of them aren't spoken anymore at all. You can see here, that Sanskrit is a dead language, and so having something on World Digital Library is a way to preserve something like that. This is just another one of those charts to show you what some of the top searches are. And the good thing about the multilingualism is you can search in one of those 7 languages. You don't have to only search in English. You can search in Spanish, in Russian, in Arabic, in French, and you can see the top search is España, which is Spain in Spanish. Just very interesting, but we like the fact that people are searching and using the site in their own language. So we get a lot of user feedback. Most of the feedback is, thanks, this is a fantastic resource, we love it, and we want to share it with the world. Some people are requesting more information about, how can my institution join the World Digital Library, how can I find out more about these maps or books. A lot of them come from digital libraries because, like I said, we're a very advanced digital library. They're interested in our metadata, they're interested in some of our digital capabilities and some of our IT. We get a lot of job inquiries. A lot of people like to say, hey, can I come to Washington, D.C. and work for you guys? Well, I would love to be able to hire all of you, and we'll all get on a plane tomorrow and go to Washington and start working on World Digital Library. Well, we don't have the money for that, but we definitely encourage people to offer their cooperation in any way possible. We also get a lot of feedback about requests for permission to use content. What's important about the World Digital Library is everything there is copyright free. It's one of the reasons why the partners choose stuff that they are allowed to put up on the website. So you are allowed, as a user in the world, to download the image as a PDF or a PNG and use the metadata and the information in any way you see fit. It's all copyright free. So, social media. This is one of the greatest ways that the world has changed in the past few years. The way we've all been able to interconnect with each other and share information and knowledge. So, I want you, I know you all are on Twitter, I know you're all on Facebook, I know I am. I want you to go to that Twitter account, and I would like you to follow WDL.org. Because right now, we launched the account a little less than a year ago, and we have over 7,000 followers right now. And we use the Twitter account for all different types of things, mainly to share information, to connect with other people, and to promote content. So sharing news. This is a great way that we use the Twitter account. Last year, when the National Library of Albania joined the World Digital Library, we tweeted, National Library of Albania has joined the World Digital Library, welcome. And that went out to our thousands and thousands of users. And then what's great about Twitter is, if you're interested in that, you can retweet it, and then it goes to more thousands. And so that's what Web 2.0 is all about. We like to build relationships with influential tweeters. There are a lot of people out there, professors and stuff, that have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers. We like to build relationships with them because we obviously want them to promote World Digital Library to their followers. So we have something from a UK history teacher, primary source resources galore, nicely presented. So that was a nice compliment for the World Digital Library that person wrote. And then of course to promote content, when we put something up on the World Digital Library, especially something fantastic like the Gutenberg Bible or some Asian manuscript or an amazing map, we promote it and say, new on WDL, a manuscript of Les Liaisons Dangereuses, Dangerous Liaisons. So we use Twitter in a lot of ways like that, and we encourage you to follow us and use Twitter in the same way. So like I said before, we use Twitter, our users are using it to recommend WDL to other people and to recommend specific content, to discover different things and tell their friends, oh my God, you should see this great item on the World Digital Library. Share individual items. And here are just some examples of some of the tweets we've gotten. I'll just go through them quickly. It's nice that some of the tweets are in other languages, which is all part of the multilingualism. WDO is great. Wow, big thanks to UNESCO. Regalo de la UNESCO para la Humanidad, that means a gift of UNESCO to humanity in Spanish. As you can see, so Twitter is very, very popular with us. And like I said, I'd really like to see all of you following our Twitter account by the end of today. So translation, I mentioned translation. It's very, very important to us. It's very time consuming and it's very expensive. So what do we translate? I mentioned we don't translate the content itself. We're not there yet. But we do translate all the site navigation on the website. So you can switch from one to any of the other 6 languages, or 7 languages total. The information about the project, like on the project website and things like that, that's all translated. The metadata and the description, and of course, the curator video transcripts. When we have curator videos and scholarly videos, you can click on the closed caption button and you can see it in whatever language that you've particularly chosen. So I did do a demo before at the National University Library of Kosovo. I don't have time to do it here, where I was showing Dr. Cyril Galdin, who is the director of the Bibliotheca Alexandrina in Egypt. He was doing a curatorial video on a particular manuscript. He was speaking in Arabic, but I had the site in Russian. So you heard Arabic and you saw the closed caption in Russian. So it's a very, very interesting and useful feature. So how do we translate? So we all know Google Translate out there, and a lot of us have translation apps on our iPhones and things like that. Machine translation is not good enough yet. It can help you with a word here and there, and it might be able to help you say, where's the closest ATM, or where's the bathroom, or something like that. But when you're talking about scholarly interpretation of items, we need native speakers to understand what you're trying to say, because you're not just translating words, you're translating meaning. And it's very important not to use machine translation. Maybe in 20 years, or even less than that, the computers will be up to that, but we really rely on native speakers. So we outsource most of our translation tasks to professional vendors throughout the world for the different languages. We get everything into English first, and then we translate into the other 6 languages. The metadata records on the item displays are the bulk of our translation needs. And like I said, the records are translated by native speakers and then go through 2 levels of review after that. And like I said, Nothing goes up on the website until all 7 languages are perfect. So if there's a problem in Chinese and all the other languages are fine, we have to fix the Chinese before everything goes up there. And so I mentioned we don't use translation, machine translation. However, native speakers can use special translation software. There's an application, a tool called Trados. And Trados uses translation memory. And what it does is that once the translator translates the paragraph, it remembers certain words. So the translator doesn't have to keep translating the same word. So it uses a translation memory. So, other multilingual things that we do, we respond to users in WDL language. When you have a question, you don't need to ask us in English. You can ask us pretty much in any language, even more than the 7, because we're lucky at the Library of Congress, we have the resources of the staff at the Library of Congress. And we probably have at least one person at the Library of Congress that speaks a language, some foreign language, and so we're very lucky at that. So we respond to a lot of users' questions like that. We do test all the language versions on the website, and we do test in all the different known browsers, Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, and Safari to make sure it works. We do a lot of outreach around the world. This is a perfect example. I'm not standing in Washington, D.C. I'm standing in Pristina, Kosovo, speaking to you, talking to you about the World Digital Library. And the important thing is about describing primary source content, using the World Digital Library as an educational resource and as a scholarly resource. And as I mentioned before, we have content in languages that are possibly endangered, such as Omaha and Zulu. And we have extinct languages such as Sanskrit, things up there that you wouldn't be able to find on a regular website. So what would we like to do in the future? Obviously add more languages. I showed you that chart before where we're looking at some of the other top languages such as German, Hindi, and Japanese. I said I am on a crusade to add Albanian one of these days in my lifetime. We would like to experiment with crowdsourcing and volunteering. Like I said, this is a very expensive project. We don't have the resources. Nobody really has the resources they need. So we're looking at people, crowdsourcing. We might be able to reach out to people like you and say, hey, we would like this paragraph translated into Albanian. Would you like to do that? Or would you like to volunteer to look for content and things like that? So we're always looking for those opportunities. And of course, maximize the use of authority files. There are many authority files out there in the world that tell you the proper spellings of names and the proper spellings of places and things like that. Well, we want to incorporate those authority files so that when you go from the World Digital Library to other digital libraries, it's all consistent. And that's the whole concept behind the consistent metadata that I was mentioning before. It helps all of us if we all have the same authority files. So some of our next steps, we're always going to be adding content to the World Digital Library. We're always going to be recruiting additional partners. We want at least one partner from every country. As resources permit, we're going to add more capacity building and more digitization centers around the world. We're working on improved applications for mobile devices. So right now, on your iPad or iPhone, you can go to the World Digital Library website and it will work. However, there are some features that do not work so well. So we're coming up with a mobile app. We should have an iPad app, hopefully by the end of the summer, and it will be available for free. And then we're looking at other site features like full text search. So right now all of our metadata is exposed and searchable, but the text in the content, in the actual item, is not available yet. We haven't done OCR on that yet. We're working on a beta project right now on full text search that should be launching sometime this summer as well. So here's just a very, very quick selection of WDL treasures. I will share this PowerPoint presentation with Ivana. So that she can share it with all of you. This is just to give you an example of some of the things we have. Mozart's manuscript score for the Magic Flute, the Gutenberg Bible, many world maps, Napoleon's study of Egypt, Chinese rare books, film of a Spanish bullfight, Japanese prints, all over the place, all kinds of cultural heritage. It's all available for you. It's all for free. It's all right now in 7 different languages. So I absolutely encourage you, please go www.wdl.org and check it out. So that leaves me with any questions. for Grant or myself. Colin Bettings.
Is the National Library of Kosovo one of your partners?
The National Library of Kosovo is not yet a partner of the World Digital Library now.
Do you have a partner in Kosovo?
We do not have a partner in Kosovo. The National Library of Albania is, and the National Archives of Albania are currently partners. Sometime in the future, we hope that the National Library, the Universal Library of Kosovo will be a partner.
Is it actually eligible under the UN?
That's actually the reason why it's not a partner. We are restricted right now to member nations of UNESCO and the United Nations. So unfortunately, it's not our decision to allow them to join. But we have been working with the library here and with Dr. Bashota at the National Library, and we feel that these type of things are great preparation for when Kosovo is eventually allowed to join, that they'll be ready to join. So I look forward to that day. So,
Another question. You mentioned a bunch of things like in the catalog of the Library of Congress. Is there any content? Is there content there or no?
The question is there content in
You know,
the
like
Library of Congress online catalog that you can get
or just
content?
the index?
There is content in that the library has started to digitize some of our books on American history. We haven't digitized many books. We have focused on digitizing our special collections, the papers of Thomas Jefferson, Americana, some of our maps. We have over 1,700 maps that we've digitized. So those materials, you could go to our online catalog, or I might say catalogs, and find that material, and then get to the materials themselves. So there is a little bit available that way. Yeah. Yes.
Jason mentioned individual items. Actually, my question is, can individuals suggest like documents and items that, for example, I want to share with you and I want it on your website? Is there any procedure or criteria?
well, we're always looking for recommendations and suggestions. You have to be affiliated with a partner, so we're not taking content suggestions from individuals. But if you're affiliated with a partner and you have ideas for content to be shared or be promoted on World Digital Library, we're absolutely looking for that. Sir, did you have a question?
First of all, I would like to congratulate you on this very impressive project.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions actually regarding the content. Do you have there besides textual content? You also got the scanned documents. Do you got also the audios and video content over there?
Yes, we do. We mostly have, and this is just a matter of resources and having, which content is promoted by our partners. We don't have as many movies and sound recordings as we would like. We're constantly trying to add that. We have amazing collection of manuscripts, of books, of maps, those type of things. We have large content of that. And when you go on the website, and you can search by type of item, you'll see exactly how we have that. But we're always looking for more audio video.
All right. In one of the slides you mentioned 78 languages for your content. Albanian was not amongst those languages. Why is that? Is it still you waiting for some content to be delivered?
Right now, if you typed in Albania, that's a good question, I appreciate it. Right now, if you type in Albania on the World Digital Library, 2 items will come up. One is a picture of 2 young boys in traditional garb. I believe it's from 1918 or something? Early 1900s. There's a photograph. And then there's an ethnic, a map of the Balkan Peninsula, Balkan region, an ethnographic map. That's also from similar early 1900s. That's all the content we have right now. The National Library of Albania has submitted content. It is in our pipeline, and we plan on putting it up there this summer. I believe what they gave to us was the first Albanian magazine written in the Albanian language. And I think they gave us every single issue of it, so we're processing it now. See, we have a lot, it takes a long time to get stuff up, sometimes up to a year to get content up on the website. So I got the content last October, it should be up hopefully by June. And then you'll have Albanian content in the Albanian language there.
When you say you got the content, are you saying that they sent you the physical copies of the magazine and you're digitizing them, or they sent you the electronic?
They actually handed me a CD of the content that they had digitized themselves. We get content from all different ways. We have Library of Congress content, which is very easy. It's easy for us to take it from our collections and digitize it on site at the Library of Congress. But we really rely on the partner institutions that digitize the content themselves. That's why we have this capacity building, and we have digitization centers in Uganda. It's not practical for someone in Uganda to pack up rare books or manuscripts, send them to Washington for digitization. You know, that things get destroyed that way. So we try to help each institution build their own digitization capacity, and then they can submit their content either online via FTP, or send us a hard drive, or send us a CD, or in the case of Albania, having the director of the National Library hand me a CD and say, this is our submission. So it works any way it can.
You mentioned that you do not translate the content, of course, which is delivered to the World Digital Library, but I guess you translate the metadata describing that content.
Correct.
Okay. And my question is, do you exchange those metadata with other libraries worldwide?
We can if requested. Usually what we get is we ask the partner institutions to send us the metadata that's required for WDL. And we have very high standards. So some institutions use different versions such as MARC or Dublin Core, anything like that. The WDL standard is kind of a modified Dublin Core set of metadata standards. All of that is available. Like I said, this is a free website. This is available to anybody and everybody. So we are more than happy to share our standards and our metadata with other institutions. Anything else? Well, thank you all so much. We really appreciate being here in Kosovo.